U.S. Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino having to testify before a judge right in federal court today, Judge Sarah Ellis. And she then made sure to let Bovino know that Monday through Friday that he has to check in with her in terms of video, what has transpired on the streets of Chicago, and really just doing checks and balances of the activity that we have seen across the Chicagoland area. I want to bring in former FBI agent Ross Rice to really break some of this down. Ross, thank you so much for your time today.
Hi, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, I was looking at some of the conditions essentially that Judge Ellis put on Bovino, and I compared it to a form of almost like what we see with electronic monitoring, that you have to come in, you kind of got to tell us what you're doing, explain what's going on. And is this considered to be unprecedented for a federal official to be ordered to be in contact with a judge on a daily basis like this?
I can't think of another situation where this has taken place, but we have a very unique circumstances here. The hearing today was to give the judge an opportunity to monitor and get an update on if a temporary restraining order she had issued several weeks ago affecting ICE and Customs and Border Patrol was being followed and if it was being effective. And that's why she had Mr. Bovino come in and testify and provide an update on behalf of the immigration enforcement actions that are going on in Chicago.
So I want to kind of point out for people exactly what the judge is requesting of Bovino here. She wants to see him at 6 o'clock in the evening every weekday in person for a report on how the day went until that TRO expires. On Mondays, Bovino will give her a report on how the weekend went. What kind of tone do you think this sets for the federal government and any type of agency that is on the ground in communities like this looking forward?
Well, it's certainly going to tell agents from ICE, Customs, Border Patrol, other federal agencies that are involved in immigration enforcement that the judge's temporary restraining order and the restrictions that she put in place a few weeks ago are being monitored and being followed. And that's the key point here. The reason she's having Director Bovino come in person is to give her a daily update. Apparently, she's not comfortable with the reports that she's been getting either from the plaintiffs in this suit or that she's seen in the media herself. And obviously, there's two sides to every story. She just wants to get the Customs and Border Patrol officials to say, this is what they're doing, these are the problems they're encountering, and this is how we're trying to follow and implement the guidelines and restrictions in your temporary restraining order.
We covered a story here, Ross, involving one of the ICE agents on the ground, and I believe it was Garfield Park. There was a shooting there. A woman was shot 5 times when it was the federal document was put out to the media about what was going to transpire in court. There were only 3 out of the 5 agents that were present that had on body cameras. And in this case, specifically today, the judge directed agents to currently make sure that they're equipped and trained with body-worn cameras. They must activate them during enforcement operations. My question to you is, how important are body-worn cameras from an investigative and accountability standpoint, looking at the fact that in some cases we know things have happened with ICE agents, Border Patrol agents on the ground, and there were no cameras present to really give their narrative of what happened or even some of what we've heard from residents on the streets?
Sure. I think from a professional standpoint, body cameras are one of the greatest assets for law enforcement because if they're utilized, if they're activated during an enforcement operation or with local police departments, if they're doing a traffic stop or an arrest of something under their jurisdiction, it really removes any doubt about what happened and when and why. Now, the one drawback to body cameras is you're getting the point of view from the officer himself. You're not going to get a panoramic view like you would from a poll camera or from a private citizen that may be shooting video on their cell phone from 50 or 100 feet away. It's a much more specific viewpoint that you're getting, and it could miss crucial points. Now, one of the incidents that the judge brought up today was, I believe, over the weekend during an enforcement action in Little Village. Director Bovino was seen throwing a tear gas canister, and he claimed that he had been struck in the head with a rock right before that. And that's what precipitated his use of the tear gas. Well, he didn't have a body camera on, and none of the body cameras that the other officers had apparently caught the person throwing this rock. Now, we have to take him at his word that that's what happened. But if he had been wearing a body camera, there's a good chance that incident might have been captured.
I know the judge mentioned wanting to see body camera footage or having it to her dating back through sometime in September.
Right.
When a court orders a law enforcement agency to then produce, use of force reports, body camera footage, any other internal documentation of the sorts, what challenges can arise in gathering and maybe reviewing and producing that material to get it to the judge?
Well, I'm sure the judge wants it in a timely manner. That's why she's directing the Director Bovino to be meeting with her face to face every day at 6 o'clock. The issue is, at least in the Chicago area, you have enforcement operations taking place at multiple venues in the city, in the suburbs. Different teams are out trying to locate and apprehend illegal immigrants. You may not get all that information in a timely manner. And the other issue with body cameras that a lot of people don't realize, the cameras are very inexpensive. Learning to use them is not that difficult either. Obviously, there's a learning curve that goes along with the training. The issue is the storage of the video. How long are you going to be able to store it? How long do you have to store it? And that's what has precluded a lot of local law enforcement agencies in the Chicago area from fully implementing body cameras, is because of the storage capacity that's needed for all the film that's shot every day.
One of the topics that came up in court today was the words imminent threat. The plaintiffs allege here that agents targeted protesters, journalists, and bystanders who posed no imminent threat. How does the law define imminent threat in this context, and should officers distinguish between enforcement action and then protected First Amendment activity, especially when we talk about on a federal level?
Well, that really is the crux of the whole court hearing today, and the temporary restraining order is the judge is trying to strike a balance, I believe, between private citizens' First Amendment right to assemble peaceably and to protest the actions of the government with the safety issues that the agents making the enforcement operations are encountering. And that becomes, imminent threat becomes a very subjective standpoint. What might be an imminent threat to me might not be an imminent threat to you, or vice versa. So the judge is trying to establish an equilibrium point here where everybody is operating under the same guidelines and the same rules. It's going to be very difficult to enforce this going forward. What someone feels might be their First Amendment right to protest is a threat to the agents and the officers. If their vehicle is being surrounded, if they're being pelted with stones or rocks or other debris, and you get emotions involved in these situations. People are fearing for their safety. The agents are fearing not only for their own safety, but the people that they've taken into custody. We saw what happened in Texas a few weeks ago when a sniper opened up on customs and immigration officials at a staging area, and I believe 2 detainees were the ones that were shot and killed. So it's a very volatile and very difficult situation.
One of the issues that comes up all the time, even when you look at videos that people post online, oftentimes they're asking the agents to show your face, identify yourself. There's no identification oftentimes, but now this judge is saying that people on the ground must identify themselves. What do you make of that? Making sure that these agents, have visible identification to where people on the streets that may encounter them know that they're talking to. Maybe it doesn't have your full name because of safety, but maybe it says, T Ewing or Ewing, I'm using myself as an example
Sure.
here, as some type of identifying factor. What do you make of that?
Well, that's completely understandable, Tia. And to be quite frank with you, all of the videos that I've seen of ICE enforcement operations, the officers that were filmed had some type of apparel on them that was identifying them as federal agents or immigration officers. So I don't know how many situations there have been, if any, where someone was engaged in enforcement operations and they had no identification on whatsoever. Um, Going beyond that, I think that's really what the judge is looking for here, is making sure that the public knows that these are legitimate sworn law enforcement officers conducting an enforcement operation, as opposed to street criminals impersonating agents for more nefarious purposes.
I think in some cases, I'm just going back through what transpired in court. There were some instances where people would cover up, I guess, their identification, and the judge wanted to make it clear that federal agents should wear visible identification, period. And I think there was some back and forth on exactly what that means, but that's what was brought up in the courtroom today. Ross Rice, it is always a pleasure. We appreciate you. Every time you lend your expertise, you have an insight that, we don't have and that we often need to hear. So thank you so much for joining us here on Chicago Live on this Tuesday edition of Chicago Live.
You're quite welcome, Tia.